Hi, everyone. My name is Gene Anthony Santiago-Holt. I wish I was there in person at Narrascope, but unfortunately I could not make it. But we have this video in replace of myself. The presentation is titled Writing a Manifesto Inside Game Engines, Interactive Systems as Resistant Narrative Interfaces. And that is admittedly a lot to take in. So I want to break down before we begin this whole presentation. A manifesto is usually understood as a fixed text, a declaration of beliefs, intentions, or political position, something stable and something that's readable. And it's something that's meant to persuade an individual, at least in my book. What I'm arguing is that once you place a manifesto inside a interactive system, inside a game engine, it stops behaving like a fixed text within like interactive design. It can become unstable, fragmented, and something that can loop, contradict itself, or even fail its project as a whole. Instead of writing about ideas, I'm writing through these systems of branching logic, loop-in structures, interactive fiction, and auto-visual layering of glitch itself. Also, throughout this presentation, there will be a flash and light warning. A little bit about myself. I go by they, them, and Naya, which is they, them in Taino culture. I wear a lot of different hats within my digital making and theory. I am a diasporic Puerto Rican, meaning I was born off the island, and I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a multimedia designer, noise performer, an auto-theoretical writer, and a practice-based researcher. And I work within the traditions of anti-art and anti-design. And throughout this presentation, you'll find QR codes linking to my work, games, and social media. I'm currently a PhD student at Drexel University in the digital media department. I recently reached candidacy, which is amazing, and this project directly connects to what will become my dissertation. I also hold a MFA in studio art and cultural research from the University of Delaware, and a BFA in sculpture with a concentration in printmaking from the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts. So, what is a manifesto? A manifesto is a public, written declaration of intention, motives, and belief systems by an individual, group, or political party. It outlines a new vision of ideology, often criticizing the status quo while calling for change or action. Manifestos frequently serve as a foundational document for movements such as political campaigns or artistic movements, defining their core principles. My artistic and theoretical lineage moves through Marxism, the Situationist International, post-structuralism, postmodernism, cyberfeminism, and new media studies. The Communist Manifesto, published in 1848 by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, is a foundational political pamphlet analyzing history as a series of class struggles, specifically between the bourgeois, the capitalist, and the proletarian, the worker class. It argues that capitalism is inherently exploitative and destined to be replaced by the communist system through revolution, advocating for the end of private property. The Society of the Spectacle, which was published in 1967 by Guy Debord. Debord describes capitalism as a system organized through mediated images where representation becomes a form of propaganda that shapes perception. Debord's Society of the Spectacle emerges directly from the Situationist International, which was founded in 1957. The Situationist positioned itself as a radical space between Marxism and anarchism, refusing both rigid parties, structures, and traditional revolutionary modes. As summarized in the Situationist International, a critical handbook, a situationist was simply anyone who rejected all authority, but without being an anarchist, and who criticized commodity society without being a Marxist. Situationism appeared as a uninitiated to be a kind of new political position between these two traditional left-wing tendencies. The Situationists became a catalyst force leading into the May 68 uprising, a student protest that expanded into a national strike and one of the most influential political events of the 20th century. Debord's texts circulated widely during the uprising, with one reviewer calling the Society of the Spectacle a terrorist Bible. Slogans from Debord's thesis appeared across Paris walls, spray-painted by both sympathizers and the Situationists themselves. To me, we are already cyborgs, interconnected with media systems and technological infrastructures. Think of your phone, tablets, and laptops. Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto, which was published in 1985, challenges the rigid dualism such as human-animal, man-woman, natural-artificial. Her cyborg disrupts these binaries by creating hybrid identities. However, Haraway's cyborg is still shaped through her positionality within a colonial structure. Donna Haraway, though she acknowledges colonial dynamics, she speaks from within those systems. In Shaman, Cyborgs, and Women, Haraway introduces a cyborg as a cybernetic organism, a hybrid of machine, organism, and a creature of social reality, as well as a creature of fiction. This shifts our understanding of the cyborg away from this science fiction cliche of half human, half machine entity towards a materialist and metaphysical figure, one produced through technology, labor, history, and political struggle. Haraway's aim is made explicit in the opening of her essay. This chapter is an effort to build an ironic political myth faithful to feminism, socialism, and materialism. The cyborg is not merely a metaphor, it is an analytic tool that reveals how subjectivity is always already hybrid, constructed, and networked. Mackenzie Work's A Hacker Manifesto, which was published in 2004, is a mediation on abstraction, property, and class struggle reframed through the lens of digital media and hacker culture. Hackers, as a new social class, produces new information and abstractions as immaterial collages that resist representation and create new from the fragments of the old. Yet these abstractions are always vulnerable to be captured by the ruling class, which is now morphed into the victorious class. So the ruling class, the ones that own the means of production, morphs into the victorious class, the ones that own the means of information. A hacker manifesto can be read as a form of speculative or science fictional turned real forecasting, a mode of theoretical fortune-telling that anticipates how modes of production might be hacked away from the spectacle and capitalism. I believe that Legacy Russell expands this idea of hacking in Glitch Feminism, which was published in 2020. Russell reframes error not as failure, but as a generative condition. And glitch becomes a way for bodies to review systems of control. These systems include the spectacle and capitalism as rigid identity structures. Much like Donna Haraway's Cyborgs, that challenges the binary thinking, Russell pushes this fragmentation even further. Glitch represents the collapse of rigid binaries, man, woman, animal, machine, really any kind of like duality structure. Glitch becomes a deliberate act of refusal. And for this reason, I see hacking and glitch as forms of liberation. For my own theory and manifesto writing, it takes the form of the Bariqua Cyborg Manifesto, and it emerges from media theory that analyzes power, technology, and representation. It addresses contemporary life under hyperreality and the spectacle. It is grounded through my own Puerto Rican diasporic experience, and it's developed through decolonial practice-based research. The ideas of the cut-up method is a revolutionary act. The taking of pre-existing material under this constraint of capitalism and remaking it without the confines of the commodity object. We can see that in collage, we can see that within remix culture, and we can see that in various forms of making when we can see the hands-on approach of sampling. There's also a literary equivalent to that, which is the cut-up method and automatic writing. The cut-up method was made by Brian Gysin, who was a British-Canadian painter, writer, sound poet, and a performance artist. He invented various experimental devices and is best known for the use of the cut-up method alongside his close friend, William Burroughs. And Brian Gysin is on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side is William S. Burroughs, who is an American writer most famous for Naked Lunch, which came out in 1959. He's also a visual artist and is widely considered a primary figure of the Beat generation, influencing postmodern authors and underground culture as a whole. From Nirvana, Sonic Youth, and Ministry, Burroughs had a huge impact on the noise, industrial, and punk scene. His writings are highly experimental and at times almost unreadable. The cut-up method uses various different forms of literary material, cut them up, and rearrange them, often randomly, into a new composition. Through an editing process, a new narrative is created out of old forms, which I would consider a form of hacking. So I use the cut-up method in a lot of different ways in my work, specifically in the Bariqua Cyborg. So I wrote 15 fragments, and once those 15 fragments were done, I wanted to continue on with this manifesto work, and I cut it all up. I put them in plastic bags, and then I went through this like intuitive editing process of placing each line down and gluing them onto a page, which created a new form of narrative. And sometimes they didn't make sense, and at times I re-edit them through the cut-up method again to make something new. And I would like to share a new fragment with all of you. This is from the Bariqua Cyborg Manifesto. The Bariqua Cyborg is a sacramental error. They reject the binary construction towards the destruction of the subject of the colonizer. This subject snipes from a safe distance from the colonial infrastructure, as the fascist industrial complex wages occupations in the form of spiritual sterilization. These occupations take the form of the creative varieties. Example, the painter jester of the ruling class, the snake oil salesperson, the victorious parasite ciphering off the hacker. These occupations use surveillance and observation to create futurist violence as a design expression of propaganda. Détournement and practice-based research. So like that word is French in origin, which means misappropriation in English, but in French, apparently it means rerouting and hijacking. It's a situationist technique of reusing pre-existing artistic media elements such as like images, text, and sound, and placing them in a new context or to subvert the original meaning. So I have like two artifacts at the bottom. One is Discover Puerto Rico, which is a kind of like vacation kind of like company, which has a lot of like advertisements out in the public. And it's so like people can visit the island, but like with that, it kind of like exploits the labor of the island, and even it as a tourist attraction, it doesn't account for like the people that live there itself, that's like under US rule and capitalism that completely suppresses the indigenous like Boricua, the indigenous people of that island. And now, and on the right hand side, we have decolonized Puerto Rico, which is something I wanted to subvert the original kind of like ad. And this is like kind of like the way to kind of describe my practice-based research within this like situationist international type of like mode of thinking. This situationist international mindset, or like remixing of pre-existing things to make them new, is like prevalent through all of my research and all of like my like design-based things that I create. Even within like card games, I use this ideas and kind of like grab to certain ideologies and flip them on their head. On the left-hand side, I have a kind of reimagining of the Unabomber into like this Wario-like being, and this kind of like mode of remixing and reusing ideologies that are like harmful or like even left-wing ideologies that I'm part of is prevalent in a game I made called Magic Kingdom Daymare Chapter Uno, which is like a free-for-all of these ideas in like this like non-linear manifesto, but also it's trying to tell a story at the same time. Within my manifesto making, within these different like interfaces, I use like a lot of software and websites to kind of like get through the process. One of them is specifically Twine. That's like kind of like the mother interface. And then there's Tyranno Builder. So like Twine is free, but Tyranno Builder is like a one-time payment. And then there's like some subscription-based things that I will show. One is Adobe Creative Cloud, specifically Photoshop and Premiere. And then there's like SoundCloud, which is like normally free, but if you want like more space, the subscription usually helps. And then the rest of them are like the freeware type of like, with like more into like the hacker vein of like Audacity, Avidemux, OBS software. Giphy is owned by Meta. And then there's Imgur and archive.org, which is probably like my like savior type of like online host and site, which if you put it on archive, you don't risk anything being taken down usually, which could happen with like all of the other online platforms like Imgur or Giphy. I have a character within Photoshop, and I use this just to get like really crude animations out and onto different platforms like Giphy, so I can use in my Twine game. And I'm going to go over that process just a little bit. I have a character with 3 frames. Each frame has a different section of a walking animation, and all of them are there. When I'm done designing my character, I want the timeline in Photoshop to be present, which is under Window and then Timeline. And once I'm done putting everything in place in the timeline, I can play it and see what it vaguely is going to look like. Then I want to export this GIF, which is a little bit different than exporting any like image, any GIF, or any like really any file you want. It's a little bit of an extra step. So I'm going to go to File, then I'm going to Export, and then I'm going to Save for Web. At least for me, I don't need to know any of this UI right here. I don't mess with it at all. It's already set up for me. And all I have to do is click Save. And then I'm going to name my GIF. Once you export your GIF, you should have something like this if you're on Windows. Sometimes with Apple products, it won't play, but that's okay. And you can upload that to Giphy or any site of your choosing. And this is just like a really quick type of introduction to GIF making in Photoshop. For a more illustrative style of animation, I use Procreate. I still make it into a GIF, but I draw everything out and I'm able to put my reference photos in there and all of the line work. And then I export that GIF out from Procreate onto platforms like Giphy. But this is kind of to show you different modes of making or different modes of animation, which will eventually be assets for games that will be implemented into Twine. Twine is a pretty interesting game engine since it's mainly a text-based format, and it's used for, you can make visual novels, you can make interactive fiction, pretty much anything that's like mostly text-based. When you're using Twine, it is good to know some coding, but when I teach this to my students, they usually have no coding background, and it becomes pretty accessible with showing them just little things just so they can get off the ground. And then we use things like the Internet Archive to upload our assets, as well as Giphy, Sound, and SoundCloud. Given we can upload all of that stuff to the Internet Archive, but there's pros and cons to each interface and kind of like platform that you share your assets to.
Okay, so this is the interface of Twine, and I have two projects. One is the Greekware Cyborg Manifesto, and then the other one is Magic Kingdom Daymare Chapter Uno. In this case, over here, Chapter One, and we have like various different, or two different stories, or two different linear or non-linear paths. One is very linear, which I'll show you first, since it's the most recent project. And within Twine, I have two different branches that lead to a beginning, or they come from a beginning, and then we have a preface, and then we have two different sections in here. One is fragments that are a little bit more cleaner, and the other one are more glitched fragments. So I want to show you both passages to show you the beginning and just talk about them for a little bit. So everything is in here. I'm going to test from this passage, but even in the interface itself, we can see all of the writing and we can see the different passageways and some of my code for this project. So when I test it out, it will open a page for me. And I'm going to not have sound right now because the sound is a little bit, it can be a lot for some people. So right here, I have a glitched image that I wanted to use for the logo, which freezes a little bit because that's just the kind of the nature of like working with glitches in videos. Sometimes in real time, they freeze. And then I have the introduction to the manifesto itself, and I have a player from SoundCloud at the bottom. I use instead of the Internet Archive because I just liked the interface of the player a little bit more. We can see the image I used at the. We can see the image that I used for the album art, and I just like the chunkiness of the player. And then I can just go down, read the fragment, highlight it if it's too much for my eyes, and then go down to each one. Sometimes I have autoplay, it's coded in. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So within each fragment, I have a GIF at the top, which I implemented through Giphy. And then I have the writing itself. And then I have a video piece that I've made in Tyranno Builder and then re-recorded and did some voiceover for it that I re-recorded and did some voiceover and then put that on the Internet Archive. So each fragment has some writing and a video piece with it. So it's like a place where my manifesto can live and constantly change, and I can constantly add to it in Twine. Now we are in the glitch side, which is a little bit more in your face. The colors are a little bit more brighter. I am using Audacity to glitch everything out and some pre-production in Photoshop. So just like on the cleaner fragment sides, I have a glitch GIF at the very top. The fragment stays the same, but then I have a glitched video that is on archive.org or the Internet Archive, whatever you want to call it. Still the same sound at the bottom, but I just want to show everyone how I'm putting everything into this format. With my other project, it takes a very different approach to manifesto making as well as structure. We can see here it has like that spider web effect. And with this project, I put player stats and there is like win and lose conditions and even enemies to fight. So in the game itself, we have our player stats from the level you're at, the experience that you have, how many wins you have, and how many times you lost. And every character you see, which is in Giphy, you can fight each character and see if you win or lose. And it tracks everything for you. Everything, all of the enemies in the game are on a dice roll. And then we can go back to the beginning. Every time you lose, it's almost like a roguelike that you have to go to the first page itself.
Play you cyborg manifesto.
Tyranno Builder is a visual novel game engine. And with visual novels, it does have a form of writing attached to it, or a form of writing that it's mostly known for, but also it's heavy on the visuals. So in the name visual novels, the most
important thing in visual novels is the visuals.
And these visuals can really look like anything, but for the history of visual novels, it is mostly Japanese-inspired or anime-inspired type of work. Here are a few screenshots in Tyranno Builder, and it's code friendly, but we do have some components that we can use, like page break or background image, or a character joins a scene when it says join scene. And then really it's each component has a function that you can click and drag into the scene. And when you click and drag it into the scene, it has to be in a order, for like a top-bottom order of which thing will happen next. So the page break or the background image will always come before the character when it joins the scene. And then after, when that character joins the scene, it will show the text, and then that character will exit. I show this engine to my first year students, my friends, and they pick up this engine really fast. And when I give demos out, they pretty much get the idea within the first 5 minutes, and then they don't really need me anymore, which is usually a weird thing. And I just let them play and use the engine however they want and help them out whenever they have questions. But if you are new to game design and like visual novels or more about character design, this is the engine for you.
The more you assign more Manifesto entire and builder.
Glitching with Audacity for me is a lot of fun. Sometimes it can be a little tricky. We are dealing with error and corruption, and we're dealing with kind of this like non-linear aesthetic within these engines. So we're technically doing something wrong. So if we get a video or we get a image, the image ones, the glitch is a little bit easier, and I'm going to show you that, but I will show the outcome of both. But with these like images, we are manipulating them in the format, and we're putting them into a sound engine, which is Audacity. So something that is visually stimulating, we're forcing into something that has like really no visual qualities, and then we're putting on certain effects like you would find like on like guitar pedals, so like reverb, flanger, distortion, and we are distorting those images to make new things. So definitely a form of hacking and a form of glitch, and the possibilities are endless.
I am going to go over how you glitch images in Audacity, which is a little bit of a process, but that is completely fine. I'm going to go to raw data. I'm going to find my images. And once I find my images, I have to encode them in a certain way, and it is ULaw. And then for the byte order, I have to put little, and then I want it in mono. It will take a little bit to import in, and you should see something like this blue bar with two different ends, and this is what it normally should look like. So when you glitch something in Audacity, you don't want to put any effects on the beginning of the time frame and the back of the time frame. I want to put a few effects onto the timeline, and then I'm going to export that out. So I am going to put an invert somewhere, and then I'm going to put a reverse. And we can see on the timeline itself, we see some changes. Then we're going to export that out. We're going to export audio, export to computer, and I'm going to want to save that somewhere. I need to make sure that it's encoded the same way it was imported in, and instead of A-law, it's going to be U-law. We can leave it raw, and we need the format as a other uncompressed file.
This artifact over here is a image that and then I went through the process of making that into a GIF in Photoshop. And just like the cut up method is a form of liberation, I really think that hacking and glitch is also a form of liberation in the sense that like you're doing something wrong and creative in an outcome, and you're taking pre-existing things and ideas and software, and you're taking it out of like this confines of
for a full in-depth demo follows QR code.
when it gets to the glitching of videos in Audacity, there's a lot of things that we need to prep. We need to encode it in a certain way, and it becomes like very technical, but also technically wrong at the same time. And that's something I really enjoy, is like using these like kind of like old software and kind of like taking them out of its like original use to make something new. So there's like certain things we have to do to the video. We have to encode it in a certain way in a Vidimux, and we have to make sure that it's like a raw file in a certain format, and we have to like click on things that normally will corrupt them and try to corrupt them in a playable way. when it comes to corrupting something in a playable way, sometimes it takes a lot of time for the prep, and sometimes it takes 12 minutes. I had some videos that were encoded for like 50 minutes just for it to not work at all. So it takes like time and patience to glitch something. I know that there's a lot of like kind of phone apps or apps online that can glitch something for you, but that's not necessarily a true glitch, and it doesn't necessarily give you the qualities as if you did it yourself manually. Think of a filter. It really becomes like a kind of imitation of an aesthetic. And with the method of Audacity, or even like finding your own way to do things, it's a lot more pleasing, at least in my book.
Example of glitch video in Twine.
The last thing I want to talk about is zines, which we can use for manifesto writing or design-based practices. And with zines, they're supposed to be limited run or multiple different runs of a piece of work, either like a piece of art or, in our case, a manifesto. And it's supposed to be a thing that you pass around that showcases a message. That message can be funny, it could be serious, it could be really any possibilities, but I want to stress that you don't have to wait for anyone to put out your ideas. Just like how you can put out ideas in the form of a game in Twine, you can do that physically. And you could even put like QR codes in a physical substrate of a zine and let that go to a digital platform. And if you made a video essay, let's just say like a recorded version in Tyranno Builder, or even if you recorded your game with like OBS software or really any like screen recording software on your laptop, you can put that on different analog substrates. What I did over here, I put it on a DVD using old software, and I also put the videos on YouTube and archive, but like I gave these out at like punk and noise shows just to get like a message across. And you can do this as well, using old media for a new message, and even like putting out a message out there that's not connected to like a techno-feudalist type of like platforms like YouTube, where on your video whenever they want, if they feel it is going against their guidelines, and these guidelines always change. They do that for a reason. on the Internet Archive. I never had a video be taken down, but I definitely had things taken down on YouTube for like very silly reasons. Thank you for everyone watching this video. I really appreciate it. Please reach out if you have any questions. And I just really want to thank Narrascope again for inviting me back for another year and for letting me showcase some work and to talk something that I really care about and to show theory and to show some of this work I've been making. And I hope that you take some of these ideas and implement them into your practice. Thank you so much.